Hey there everyone, Decadence here, and today I'm going to be talking about, frankly, a topic that shouldn't even be debated about anymore at this point in time. But alas, here we are. The topic is, can you still be a goth if you don't like or listen to goth music? To put it bluntly, no. Now before you stop the video and give me a thumbs down and write your comment, please hear me out before you do, and when you reach the end of the video and still disagree, feel free to do what you may. Anyway, let's dive in. I've seen this particular topic floating around the internet for years, and the problem I notice is that hardly anyone actually answers the question, and instead, they usually pussyfoot around it while not answering the freaking question. Especially when it comes to YouTube videos, and you know what? I can understand why many would not want to talk about this subject, as I don't want to possibly offend or lose subscribers. But frankly, enough is enough, and it's time people started being honest and telling it like it is. Now I understand that I'm possibly going to ruffle some feathers, but before I go any further, before you write something like, "Who made you the arbiter of what is and isn't goth?" To which my response is, I'm not saying that my opinion is automatically right and absolute. However, I've been looking into the music and exploring it for the past 10 going on 11 years now, and I finally come to my own opinions on this particular topic. And I'm merely just sharing my opinion, and frankly, it's up to you if you want to accept it or not, and that's really all there is to it. I just feel I need to get this point out there just to give some context, and for you to hopefully understand where I'm coming from. Before I go any further, let me explain a little bit more about goth music as a whole. Goth music is not just 80s post-punk music. In fact, goth has quite a few subgenres. These subgenres consist of general gothic rock, death rock, dark wave, cold wave, ethereal wave, and gothabilly. Each of these styles of goth use the gothic rock sound and mix them with different varying styles. For example, death rock is faster and more aggressive, as it takes gothic rock and mixes it with punk, whereas a style like dark wave mixes gothic rock with new wave and synth pop. My point is that while there is a definitive sound that defines general goth music, it's also pretty versatile and has been used in all sorts of differing styles, and there really is something for everyone. Well, at least for anyone who's into general alternative, rock, or synth-based music. Not only that, but there was actual goth music being made well into the 90s and 2000s, and even today as we speak. So why am I bringing this up? Well, the main complaint I hear from some people trying to get into the scene is that they just couldn't get into goth music. And when I ask them what bands they try listening to, 95% of the time, they usually tend to list the standard 80s bands, like Bajas, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and Sisters of Mercy. And whenever this happens, I go and ask them if they had tried listening to goth music that came out after the 80s. Bands like Nosferatu, Love Like Blood, Paralyzed Age, Suspiria, His Incision, Kind of Zymox, London After Midnight, and many others. I'm usually met with confusion and curiosity, and from there on, I will ask them about what kind of sounds they particularly enjoy in music, and I'll then make some suggestions on some bands that I feel they may enjoy, and most of the time, it's a success. So whenever I hear someone who claims to be goth, but doesn't like the music, it makes me genuinely think that they haven't tried very hard, because again, there are varying styles of goth music, and I'm sure if they continue to look, they'd find some bands that they would truly enjoy. So maybe you've tried listening to some 80s post-punk and it just wasn't for you. That's a-okay. Are you into a more faster aggressive sound? Well, why not try some death rock? Or even some gothic rock bands that came out during the late 80s, 90s, and 2000s. Perhaps you like something more synth pop and danceable. Well, why not get on down and try some dark wave? Or maybe you like music with a more soothing, calm, and a dreamy-like atmosphere. Well, my friend, why not try listening to some ethereal wave? Again, my point is that 80s post-punk is not the only goth music, and there are other subgenres that you may really enjoy if you give it a try. Because I guarantee you that there are some goth bands out there that you'll really enjoy. You just gotta be patient and just keep looking. But while I'm on the subject, what about gothic metal? Okay, here's the honest truth about that genre. Gothic metal is not goth music. The gothic metal sound doesn't take any inspiration from goth or its subgenres. It only takes inspiration from metal while adding in some classical backing undertones here and there. Because of this, gothic metal is nothing but a subgenre of metal. So if you're someone who really enjoys metal and doesn't like any goth music, you're simply a metalhead, as that is the clear-cut definition of what a metalhead is, which is a fan of metal music. What about industrial music? Again, no, it's not really a goth style neither. While I can understand why some would consider it a goth style, it really isn't, as for one, industrial music originated from electronic music, while goth originated from punk. And two, industrial has always been more of its own thing in the same way as goth and metal, as it has its own subgenres, from general industrial, industrial metal, industrial rock, IDM, dark ambient, electro-industrial, and neurofunk to name a few. But one thing for sure is that goths and rivetheads tend to enjoy each other's music, and both goth and industrial music tend to blend in very well in goth clubs. But aside from that, industrial music has always been its own music style. And while I'm on the topic of music, here's another thing that has to be said. It's okay to listen to other genres of music besides goth music. Anyone in the subculture who says otherwise is being an elitist, a true elitist. While I'm on the topic, let's talk about elitism in general. Frankly, the term elitist has been thrown around so much in the last 2 decades, and honestly, it has lost any actual meaning when it comes to the gothic subculture. Now, I'm not denying that there aren't true elitists out there in the subculture, but there is a difference between an elitist jerk and someone who is just being honest. Here are 2 examples of actual elitists in the goth scene who you're bound to run into at one point or another. Number 1 are the 80s elitists. These are the people who think that the only form of goth music is stuff that only came out in the 80s. They stick their noses up at anyone who prefers to listen to goth music that came out after that decade, and will say things like, if you don't like 80s post-punk, you're not a real goth. Or any other comment that pretty much degrades a person who prefers to listen to goth music that came out after the 1980s. They also tend to say that if you don't like a particular 80s band, like Baja's, Sisters of Mercy, Christian Death, or any other big name in the scene, who they personally like, you're again not a goth. And number 2 are the people who say that you can't listen to other genres of music alongside goth. According to them, you can only listen to goth music and that's it. If you happen to listen to other genres of music outside of goth, you are not a goth. These are the main 2 examples that come to mind when I think of true elitism. Well, when it comes to the music discussion anyway. Now, if the person in question is merely saying that in order to be goth, you have to at least have some enjoyment for the music, they aren't being an elitist, they're just being honest. So before you call someone an elitist, actually analyze what they're saying before you make any quick judgments. Because I'm willing to bet that if the comment you're responding to is the latter, they really aren't being an elitist at all. So finally, what about people who are into the dark aesthetic, but just don't like goth music? These people are simply darkly inclined, as that is what the term originally stood for. People who are into the dark and macabre. Or if we want a simpler, more broad term, alternative. Alternative was the umbrella term used to describe people who didn't care about fitting societal norms and found interest in things unconventional. And well, that's pretty much all I gotta say on this. At the end of the day, goth was and still is a music-based subculture, and if you don't enjoy the music, regardless of the era or subgenre, then I'm sorry, but in my opinion, no, I wouldn't consider you a goth. But if you happen to like the dark aesthetic, then you are simply darkly inclined or alternative, or gothic in a descriptive sense. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, nothing at all. And if hearing all this makes you upset, I'm sorry, but frankly, I really don't care at this point. Because I've seen this topic for years, and honestly, it's time to buckle down and be brutally honest with this question that shouldn't even be a thing of discussion anymore at this point. And some of you are probably asking, gee Kai, why did you make this video? Why do you care so much about this? Well, here's the honest truth. I know that I didn't have to make this video, but honestly, I wanted to make this video. When it comes to things that I care about, I will speak up, and this topic just happens to be one I'm really passionate about. That's really all there is to it. So I hope that answers your question. To quote a fellow YouTuber, punks listen to punk music, metalheads listen to metal music, and goths listen to goth music. And the music is not going anywhere. Before I end the video, I want to give special thanks to fellow YouTubers Angela Benedict, Acumortis, and Eternal Winter for sharing their thoughts on this matter as well. And I'll be sure to leave links to their videos, and I highly recommend checking them out if you haven't already. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Kai Decadence, and you have yourselves a great day. Thanks for watching. That's being called for my